Hello everybody, and I hope you're doing well. I'm coming to you from a rainy Stratford, so let's go. But according to Rav's opinion, that association with an oath is not considered an oath. The Braita poses a difficulty, as it indicates that association with a vow is considered a vow. A corresponding rule should apply to an oath. The Gemara answers, Rav could say to you, resolve the difficulty posed by the Braita and say that the Braita teaches this. And Rashi explains that according to Rava, the Braita does not discuss a bond as a distinct type of prohibition that one can generate, but rather addresses the nature of the prohibition generated by a vow. The Torah contains no explicit reference to prohibition generated by association. We would understand Rava's opinion to be that just as an association with an oath is not an oath, so too an association with a vow is not a vow. According to the Rava's interpretation of the phrase, when a man vows a vow to the Lord, as meaning that a vow must be associated with an item forbidden by means of a vow, is not referring to regular vows, but to vows that generate prohibitions that apply to everyone, such as vows of consecration, see the Baal HaMaor and the Ramban. By contrast, the Rif and Tosfot explain that Rava also holds that vows can be stated through association, and the dispute between Abai and Rava is limited to oaths. Some explain that according to Rava, association is possible with vows, but not with oaths, because it is only in the context of vows that the Torah legislated association, specifically saying, when a man vows a vow to the Lord, in Sefer Hashlama. Others explain that this distinction is a function of the essential difference between vows and oaths. Since a vow renders an object forbidden directly, that prohibition may be extended by associating another object with it. One says that this object is like that one, and in doing so, the inherent prohibition extends to the new object. Oath, by contrast, concern the one who took the oath, in that he renders some action prohibited to himself, with the prohibition of the object being only and the indirect result of the oath. Since the object itself is not intrinsically forbidden, it is impossible to extend the prohibition to another object, said Duran. According to the Migash, even Rava holds that an oath generated by association takes effect. The dispute between Rava and Abaye is with regard to whether one is liable to bring an offering if he violates such an oath. The explanation of the Rav is similar. He claims that the prohibition he shall not break his word applies in case of association, and that even though one does not bring an offering for an oath on an utterance in cases of unwitting violation of the prohibition, one does receive lashes in cases of intentional violation. Which is the bond of a vow mentioned in the Torah? The basic type of vow in the Torah involves associating some item with another item that's forbidden by vow, such as when one says, this loaf is forbidden to me, like an offering. One may also vow by declaring, this loaf is forbidden to me, or this loaf is a prohibition for me. Additionally, one may associate an item with another item that is already forbidden by vow by simply declaring, this one is like that one. One may do this successively, even if he does it more than 100 times, all items will be forbidden by vow. The object of a vow does not have to be a physical item. One may vow to fast on a specific day and later declare that there are different days like that one, and one is then prohibited from eating and drinking on the second day as well. This is in accordance with the opinion of Rava. That's in Rambam Sefer Nidam 1117 C5 Shulchan Aruch Yerodei 241 and Behagwa there. When is a bond, i.e. the acceptance of a prohibition on oneself, considered a vow? According to Rava, bond in the verse is not referring to association. Rather, it is referring to one who says, it is incumbent upon me that I will not eat meat and that I will not drink wine, like on the day that his, i.e. my father, died, or like on the day that so-and-so was killed. And Shmuel says, this is halacha when he is prohibited from eating meat and drinking wine by vow since that day, e.g. the day his father died. What is the reason of Shmuel's caveat? The verse states, when a man vows a vow to the Lord, Numbers 33. The redundancy of the phrase vows a vow teaches that when one associates a vow with another prohibition, it does not take effect unless he vows by associating with an item forbidden by means of a vow. So what does that mean? If one associates a permitted item with a forbidden item, the permitted item becomes forbidden only when the original prohibition was generated by a vow. If it was inherently forbidden, then the associated item remains permitted. Consequently, if one associates a permitted item with an offering or any other consecrated item, the permitted item becomes forbidden. If one associates a permitted item with, for example, non-kosher food, no vow takes effect. And that's Rambam Sefer Daf 19 Shulchan Aruch Yerodea 204:1-2. Some understand from this passage that part of the fundamental nature of a vow is that it is a prohibition generated by comparing an object to forbidden objects in the Meiri. It is clear from the Rambam's presentation of these halachot that the essential nature of a vow is not the association of one object with another, but the verbal designation of a prohibition unto an object. Accordingly, the passage here teaches that in a case where one vows by association, the association must be with an object rendered forbidden by the verbal designation of a prohibition, such as a vow or consecration, and one cannot generate a prohibition by associating one object with another object. The prohibition is inherent. See the one on Tractate Dam 14a, see the Mishnah Melech, and Rambam Sefer Dam 1:7. The issue is derived from this verse and is limited to vows. The Gemara discusses the Braita. One says, "It come upon me that I will not eat meat and I will not drink wine, like on the day that his father died." The Gemara asks, "Isn't it obvious that he is prohibited from eating meat and drinking wine? Why does the Braita need to mention a specific example of a vow concerning the day his father died?" The Gemara answers, "It was necessary because the Braita states that a vow takes effect for the sake of the other example, like on the day that Gedaliah ben Achikam was killed. Otherwise, it may enter your mind to say, since even if he did not vow to refrain from eating meat or drinking wine on that day, they would be prohibited him anyway." Most early commentaries had a version of the text according to which the vow takes effect because the fast of Gedaliah is of rabbinic origin. Rashi rejects that version of the text, claiming that since a vow takes effect with regard to a matter that is already a mitzvah, a vow not to eat takes effect on a fast day. Even if the fast is by Torah, see 25a. The Torah will explain the text that includes reference to the rabbinic origin of the fast of Gedaliah by explaining that if one associated a vow with a vow to fast on a fast day that is mandated by the Torah, association will not take effect because it would be regarded as an association with an inherently prohibited matter rather than a matter prohibited by a vow. It is only because the fast of Gedaliah is of rabbinic origin that a vow to fast on that day can make the object of the association. Several commentators offer different explanation of the reference to the rabbinic origin of the fast of Gedaliah. They understand that the principle that a vow takes effect in a matter involving a mitzvah applies only to cases where the vow contravenes the mitzvah, like a vow not to take the lulav. But a vow to observe a mitzvah in the Torah does not take effect, in accordance with the principle that a prohibition does not take effect where another prohibition is already in place. Therefore, a vow to fast on fast of Gedaliah takes effect only because the prohibition against eating on that day is rabbinically instituted. As this is a public fast day, when he did not vow to refrain from eating or drinking on that day, the prohibition of the vow would not take effect on him, and that subsequent vow would then not be associated with the vow with an ordinary prohibition. Therefore, the Bible teaches us that the vow made on the fast day takes effect, and the second vow can be associated with it. The Gemara comments, Rabbi Yochanan also holds in accordance with the opinion of Rava that a bond is not an association with an oath, but an oath itself. As when Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylon, he reported to Rabbi Yochanan that Rabbi Yochanan said, if one says, by my clear utterance I will not eat of yours, or in my bond I will not eat of yours, it is an oath. When Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, he reported that Rabbi Yochanan says, if one takes an oath saying, I will eat, or I will not eat, relating to the future, and does not fulfill it, it is a false oath. And its prohibition in the Torah is from here, and you shall not take an oath by my name falsely, so that you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Leviticus 19:12. If one takes an oath saying, I ate or I did not eat, relating to past action, and it is a lie, it is an oath taken in vain. In other words, untrue oaths about the past are categorized as oaths taken in vain, a category which one might have thought included only oaths about matters that are impossible or obviously false, like an oath that an item is made of wood is made of gold. And its prohibition in the Torah is from here. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not absolve of guilt that he that takes his name in vain, in Exodus 27. Dimi continued, with regard to vows, where one states an item is forbidden like an offering in the Kanamat, if he subsequently derives benefit from that item, one violates the prohibition. When a man vows a vow to the Lord, or to take an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. If one renders a food forbidden to himself by means of a vow and then transgresses and eats it, he has violated the prohibition, he shall not break his word, and he is liable to receive lashes by Torah. Rambam Sefer Fly Hechon Dom 1:5. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. Numbers 33. The Gemara raised objection from a Braita. The prohibitions against taking an oath in vain and taking a false oath are one. The Gemara suggests, what is the Braita not teaching that if an oath taken in vain refers to the past, a false oath also refers to the past? Apparently the statements are, I ate and I did not eat, are both false oaths. Contrary to Rabbi Yochanan's statement that a false oath is one that relates to the future. The Gemara answers, are these cases comparable? This case of a false oath is as it is, and that case of an oath taken in vain is as it is. Why then is the meaning of the assertion of the Braita that they are one? It is that both were spoken in a single utterance. What's the footnote? This statement serves to explain how the two versions of the 10 Commandments are inconsistent. Accordingly, both versions were miraculously stated simultaneously at Sinai and were later recorded separately in writing. In the expanded version of this statement that appears in the Jerusalem Talmud, other pairs of conflicting verses are explained in the same way. Those cases are not instances of two versions of the same mitzvah, but instances of conflicting halachot, and claim that they were said in one utterance indicates that despite the ostensible conflict, both are true and a way must be found to realize both. And several commentaries note the comparison to the case of remember and observe is inexact. Remember and observe appear in the different versions of the mitzvah Shabbat, which is part of the 10 Commandments given on Mount Sinai. The concept that they were spoken in a single utterance is the explanation of how the two accounts of the same event, one in the Exodus chapter 20 and the other in Deuteronomy chapter 5, are different. But according to both accounts of the 10 Commandments refer to an oath taken in vain. The prohibition against taking a false oath appear in an entirely different context. See Leviticus 19:12. The Midrash explains that when the Gemara says here that the terms false and in vain were spoken in a single utterance, it is not referring to an oath taking. It's not referring to oath taking, but to the different versions of the prohibition against bearing false witness in the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20:12. The verse states, "You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor." 1 Deuteronomy 5:16. The verse states, "You shall not bear false witness in vain against your neighbor." Midrash also offers another explanation. The Gemara's assertion that both are spoken in a single utterance does in fact refer to the prohibitions against taking a false oath and taking an oath in vain. Based on the statement of Rabbi Yochanan 21a, that from the repetition of the term in vain in the verse in Exodus 27, one may derive halachot that relate to the prohibition against taking a false oath. It's possible to conclude that the verse in Leviticus was also taken outside and together with the verses about talking about an oath in vain and the giving of the Torah, like that which is taught in a Braita, to remember the Sabbath day and to keep it holy in Exodus 28, and observe the Sabbath day, keep it holy in Deuteronomy 5:12, was spoken in one utterance in a manner that the human mouth cannot say and that the human ear cannot hear. The Gemara asks, granted, there remember and observe was spoken in a single utterance in order to teach a halachot that Rav Ada Bar Hava says, as Rav Ada Bar Hava says, women are obligated to recite Kiddush, sanctifying the seventh day. The Gemara here is referring to the Kiddush that is recited on Friday night at the beginning of the Sabbath meal, as opposed to Kiddush recited during the day. The evening Kiddush is mandated by the verse in Exodus 28 and requires a verbal pronouncement that the day is sanctified. The sage expanded this mitzvah and included wine in the ceremony. The Kiddush recited during the day is called, perhaps euphemistically, the Great Kiddush, and is of rabbinic origin. Women are obligated to the mitzvah of reciting Kiddush even though it is time dependent. This is derived from the principle that anyone who is obligated to keep the halachot included in the mitzvah, observe the Sabbath day, is obligated in the mitzvah, remember the Sabbath day. Since women are obligated by Torah law, they may also recite Kiddush for men. Shulchan Aruch Chaim 2171-2. By Torah, even though it is a positive time-bound mitzvahs, since the verse states, remember and observe, indicating that anyone is obligated to observe, i.e. it is prohibited from performing labor on Shabbat. Performing labor on Shabbat is obligated to remember by citing Kiddush. And these women, since they're obligated to observe, they're also obligated to remember. But here with regard to prohibition, they're taking a false oath and taking an oath in vain for what halacha is necessary for them to have been spoken in a single utterance. One explains, rather the two prohibitions are spoken together to teach that just as one is flogged, low care, violation of prohibitions such as the cooking of milk and meat together in Exodus 23:19 are generally punishable with lashes. There are several exceptions to this halacha. One, violation of prohibition without an action being performed, such as hating one's fellow in one's heart, Leviticus 19:17 does not warrant lashes. Two, a transgression for which the Torah provides a means of reparation that has a corrective measure imposed rather than lashes. And three, a collective prohibition that includes several different halachot are not subject to lashes. No punishment is administered even if one violates all individual prohibitions at once. Four, a transgression that under certain circumstances would warrant the death penalty does not include lashes. Concerning a prohibition whose violation results in liability for lashes, they are administered only if there were two witnesses to the transgression, and the sin was forewarned immediately prior to his transgression. A court of 3 judges is required in order to administer lashes. To take an oath in vain, so is one also flogged for taking a false oath. The Gemara asks, isn't it the opposite? Kalpe laya. Most understand the literal meaning of this expression of puzzlement as to where you're facing. The question indicates if you're looking at the matter backward. You are looking at the matter backwards. Some of the Gaonim suggest that it literally means facing the tail, as if to say you're facing the direction of the tail, like a person is riding backward on an animal. It is clear that one receives lashes for taking a false oath about the future, which one violates with an action, but an oath taken in vain about the past is merely a verbal pronouncement. Rather say like this, just as one is flogged for taking a false oath, I violating one's oath about the future, so is one also flogged for taking an oath in vain. One who intentionally violates his oath, rendering it false, is liable to receive lashes. One who intentionally takes an oath in vain is also liable to receive lashes. That's the Roman Sefer Shevuout 1:3-7. The Gemara asks, why must this brisa state that one is flogged for either type of oath? Isn't it obvious? This is a prohibition that is a prohibition, and for both one is liable to receive lashes. The Gemara answers, lest you say as Rav Papa said to Abaye that the verse, for the Lord will not absolve of guilt that he takes his name in vain, verse 27, might indicate that God will not absolve him at all, and even if he is punished, he cannot atone for his sin. Thank you for listening and wish you all the best. Bye.